All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Autodesk Virtual Academy. I'm Nigel Ambayak, your host for today and all days. And if you may notice, I am not alone today. Today, I have Matt here with IAC Industries. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself here a little bit?
Matt McConnell, pleased to be here with Mr. Nigel, the man behind the curtain, as you will. Been working with CATIV for a little bit here. We're about to get into that. But before we do, I want to introduce IAC Industries. I am the Director of Marketing and Sales for IAC. And we specialize in making and manufacturing, engineering, industrial, and laboratory metal furniture, both metal and aluminum. We'll be showcasing today the Dimension 4 product, which is actually the flagship built in 1985. So it will be quite the journey to see a 2D version turn into 3D. So I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. And so I guess that brings it to our topic for the day, right? And that's transitioning from 2D to 3D. And so Matt said, you know, they started this flagship product in the 80s, right? 3D CAD didn't really exist in a, I would say, mature fashion then. And right. A lot of people maybe still using drafting boards at that time, but people switching to 2D things like AutoCAD as well. So I know that you guys over there at IAC made that transition from 2D to 3D pretty recently. And we kind of want to go through what that journey looked like. What the benefits were of moving from 2D to 3D and how that really affected your business overall, as opposed to just the designers and engineers.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I first want to give a shout out to Mr. John Nodi, the Director of Engineering for IAC, and Mr. Alfonso Moreno, who was really the one that tackled this project head on. Essentially, we were in a bit of a quagmire for a bit. We had a substantial amount of drawings. We have 65,000 top-level part numbers. And I won't get too far into the minutia there, but it is quite the undertaking for us to even think about taking those 2D versions into 3D. So essentially, we had to come up with a way of going about it and really justify it. And currently in this market space, there is a high demand for 3D. It's in fact, I mean, you know, the younger generations, that's all they're learning. So you're going to have some of the older generations who are used to the 2D drawings, and you're going to have some of the younger generations that only operate in 3D. So how are we going to make that transition? And we'll get into that in just a second, Nigel. But,
absolutely.
The reason that we did it is we need to be modern. We need to be a little bit more contemporary to the times. And also, from a marketing perspective, we needed to have an asset that allowed us to market this product efficiently and effectively in a way that the consumer can see and almost feel like they're touching and feeling a real demo right in front of them, just like I'm tapping on this desk right now. And Nigel and his team, again, we'll get into that in just a second, were a huge support system to get us there. And if you visit IACindustries.com, you'll start to see how the 3D models are really represented on our website. Again, a topic we'll address in just a little bit.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. And you mentioned a little bit about the relationship with CATIV. The reason that it's so easy to have Matt and his team, you know, join us for this is because we're on the same floor of the same building.
We sure are.
Yeah. So, Matt, do you want to go over a little bit?
I really enjoy this story, actually. So I had mentioned John Nodi's name in the beginning. And John is the one that went out and procured the necessary softwares for us to operate on an engineering capacity. Really something that's not my bailiwick. So we just recently moved from Brea, California to Goodyear, Arizona. And in that transition, we moved some of the office space to here in Brea. Well, I'm moving in and I see all these really nice people on the first floor, and they're always courteous. They're always shaking hands. And I'm like, man, I'm just moving stuff in. I'm all sweaty, but they're still being nice. And come to find out one day, Conwar, owner of CATIV, a gentleman, walks up, knocks on the door, walks into my office, hands me his card and says, hey, I'm Conwar. I work with John Nodi. I said, what? So it was really impossible to look past the irony in that situation. So we are lucky enough to be right here in CATIV's location as the corporate location for CATIV. And Al and I can walk downstairs and shake Nigel's hand and the rest of the team and have a really good time. And have a presence basically every single day. Now, not everybody watching this is going to have that same opportunity, but we are lucky enough to fall into that irony, and it's worked out real well for us.
Nice. Yeah, it's so coincidental, right? And it's kind of ironic that ended up being the case here, right?
It was.
And so let's just jump back into the aspect of 2D to 3D. You said, you know, it was a big journey going from 2D to 3 dimensions. But what kind of opportunities did that open for you guys? And how did that all come about?
So Al first started with the iParts and Inventor, or iAssembly actually, and then we went into the Inventor Studio side of things to actually get more of the marketing. So we have two compartments really working for us in this situation. We have the one that's really drawing specific, engineering specific, and production and manufacturing specific. Then you have to where we move into the Inventor Studio, which allows us to take the drawings to that next level that we're able to use for marketing. So one of the largest components of this is we need the manufacturing first, and obviously we need that first. But how do we sell what we manufacture?
Yep.
And that's where this transition really benefited marketing. And so I was able to work with Al and Kativ, and we were able to come up with these renders. And today we're going to be looking at the Dimension 4 that Nigel introduced in a little bit.
Absolutely.
And that's, and again, our showcase. But how are we going to get that to that next level where it's not just a drawing, you know, where it's not like showing somebody something that they're kind of interested in, but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles. It's not dressed up. It's not marketing, right? So we then transitioned from the Inventor Studio side of things and moved it into Fusion 360. That is where everything opened up from a marketing perspective. So within Fusion, we're not only now able to use our approval drawings that we send to our customers to make sure that they sign off on what they want. So we can actually send a link to them of a 3D view, full rotation, could blow out the bill of materials and everything that we didn't used to have, and now we have. But additionally to that, I'm actually able to use Fusion 360 almost like an application for our sales team and our distributor base. So now they're able to go into a customer and say, oh, you want to see this drawing? Look right here. They're able to blow it up. They're able to actually show them the bells and whistles right there on the floor of whomever customer they're visiting.
Right, with just an internet connection.
Just internet connection, that's it. And some of them are actually downloadable. So if somebody has a program already on their iPad and they can work offline, sometimes you have that capability. Not all the time, but sometimes. So for the full capability, of course, we need the online version. So all that is necessary is the internet. I'm also able to then take Fusion through application program interface into our website and use all of the same functions and capabilities that Fusion offers within my own website.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing. And we'll show that off a little bit after we do some of the in-product demos. And I think that's really the key here is a lot of the benefit that you guys probably reaped from all of this is the ability to create a more detailed representation for people that may not be familiar with how to interpret a 2D drawing, right?
Like me. Nigel knows that I'm a novice here, and I'm here to represent the global story of everything. But Al is really my main man when it comes to the technical side of things. But it's a great example that Nigel just gave in the sense that, you know, you can really use me as the layman in this situation. If I had a 2D drawing in front of me and I'm being asked to approve it, and my job is for the company I'm working for to go procure the furniture, as an example, I might not know all the bells and whistles. I might not know how to sign that off. And then I'm gonna have to go to the next layer, the next layer, and the next layer of people in the project management side of things to really get the approval.
Right.
Through the 3D drawing, I can actually conceptualize that. Yes, me, the layman. So I can look that up, I can blow it up, I can see where all the nuts and bolts, and I actually pulled this out, and Nigel said I can use it as a prop real quick. But this is all of the actual specifications for the Dimension 4. It's part of our brochure that we give. But why is that important? Because you can only imagine, how am I supposed to visualize all this on a 2D? It's very, very hard. So we're now able to take all of this and stick it into the product that you guys are about to see. So Nigel, I'm glad you brought that up because it's the truth.
Absolutely. And so before we jump into Inventor, right, I just want to go over some of the experiences I've been through. You know, here at Kativ, we've helped a lot of companies make this transition, right, to go from 2D to 3D. There's a lot of questions about that process, right? What do we do with all of our legacy data? And for example, here, I'll run through this list really quick. These are some of the really common ones. The learning curve, right? You have to learn a new software. And I know that sometimes that's not the easiest thing to get your team to do if you've been working in AutoCAD for 15, 20 years, like a lot of our customers
Comfort zone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Time, right?
Yes.
I know Matt, busy guy. And I can only imagine his team are also a group of busy people. and being able to spend the time to be able to create new workflows, learn new applications. These are things that you need to take into account when trying to make these transitions, right? You want to be able to set aside that time to be able to do that.
Yes, sir.
The evaluation of the current state, and what I like to think about when I talk about this is, you know, you want to kind of take a look at what your current process is in 2 dimensions or 3D if you want to change somehow. See what you guys are currently doing and what you want to do, right? And what kind of steps it'll take to do that. And then my favorite acronym, which is also a band, I guess, is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. It's something that I learned from a 8th grade algebra teacher.
It works today.
Absolutely. Matt and I were talking about this the other day.
Yep.
We all want to go to the moon.
Yep.
Let's get 3 feet off the ground first.
Yeah, let's start
there. Right. Let's aim for the moon, sure, but let's not try to get there in one jump.
Right.
And a lot of times people want to go from 2D to full automation in 3D.
And that's marketing, by the way. Marketing wants it quick.
That's really difficult sometimes, right? So you want to be able to cut that into smaller chunks and be able to reach these more achievable and definable goals, because in a 3-month span, you're not going to go from 2D to automation, right? You might go from 2D to 3D with the intention of 6 months down the road going to some automation of your more standard components. And then consider who will be affected. It's not just engineering. It's not just design, right? It's people on Matt's team, right? On the sales and marketing team that need to get some of these 3D renders of the actual product, or people in procurement that need to order a bunch of the raw material. All of these things that need to happen. Things you need to look out for and things you need to think about when you're going from 2D to 3D. It's not just as simple as let's install Inventor and let's start using it. There's a lot of things to think about, and I want to make sure that if you are considering making that change, that you do take these into account when doing that.
Yep.
Not trying to scare you, but I'm just trying to make it so that you put yourself in the position where you're most successful moving forward. So without further ado,
that's what Katiev's there, by the way. I did want to jump in there. You know, there's a consulting side of Kativ, and I'm not really here, you know, as a sales pitch for Kativ, because I'm already sold on it. So I'm actually here just to share the experience. So what Nigel just laid out is absolutely true. You're going to have these kind of, you know, situation room conversations where you're really debating whether you want to make that jump. Well, let me tell you right now, you have to make that jump. It's the time, it's where we are. So Kativ really kind of handholds and guides you along towards what is the best software for it. And then when you take it to a different direction, which is more marketing than just the engineering side, then there's a whole nother layer to that. So the best thing to do is, just as Nigel said, you want to really plan out the baby steps. There's nothing wrong with the baby steps at all, because you can get in these things and it's very consuming. But it's great to know that you have somebody that you can talk to, really easy, very accessible, to where you might find that you're kind of hitting that firewall and you're just like, I don't know how to get past it. One phone call and they can take you by pretty quick. So it makes the baby steps a lot easier and actually a lot faster.
And I want to clarify too, is IAC did a lot of this 2D to 3D stuff by themselves.
We did. Right? Good job, Al.
Absolutely. Like, we were part of the process to be able to support that, but they had that initiative to do it. Al pretty much was, I guess, the spearhead when it comes to doing that.
He did, man. I go in his office and he's just in the zone and he's just enjoying it. The software works out real great. It is user friendly. So he did have the capability to learn pretty quick, but we do owe that side to Al. But when Al did run into a situation, Kativ was certainly there. But the software does, you know, speak for itself a lot. If you have somebody like an Al that really wants to commit the time to bring you to that next step. So we were lucky in that sense, but we also had the parachute if we needed it.
Absolutely. And so without further ado, let's jump into this, right? So to run through this, let's jump into Inventor, which is right here on my screen. This guy as well. So here is the Dimension 4 product, like we were talking about here earlier. But let's start with, I guess, the first step is kind of evaluating the current state of your 2D data, right?
Sure.
You have, I guess you guys started in the 80s, so you have 30 years of 2D data. What do you do with all of that, right? You can't, you know, a lot of the concern is like we have all of this powerful engineering data, and it does contain a ton of information. You don't want to just throw that out and stop using it. So what do you do with that 2D data? And Inventor really lends itself well to some of that. So I'm going to jump into this part right here that I have, and let's take a look at what this is. So people looking at this, if you are familiar with Inventor, might think, hey, this is just a sketch. Well, actually, it is a DWG underlay. And this is something that they added in Inventor a couple of years ago. essentially what you can do is you can jump into the Manage tab, and under Import, there's the ability to import pretty much all models. And this is the same thing. You can open SOLIDWORKS step. It's pretty much the same import functionality as if you opened a part file, use import. In this case, you can pick DWG files. In this case, I'll choose the scripper file, and to save us the, I guess, waiting for this to load, I've loaded it already. And you get this DWG file here in the browser. What's really interesting about this is completely associative with the original DWG file. So if that DWG gets updated and saved by the person working on it for some reason, it will update here in Inventor, which is really cool, the underlay itself. And if you make the geometry related to some of this 2D geometry as well, your 3D geometry will get updated. So super powerful. And on top of that, right, I could turn this off in terms of visibility. I'll turn that back on though. What's really powerful is because AutoCAD and Inventor talk so well to each other, you can turn on and off all of the layers. So I'll just turn them all on, right? You have all of this AutoCAD information for the center hole and all these center lines and all of that stuff, right? This is all powerful information that came from that AutoCAD file that you want to be able to reuse down the road. You've already dimensioned all of this in AutoCAD. Why do you need to do it again? It recognizes the units, all of that fun stuff. So I'll turn them all off and just turn this one layer on with some of the major geometry. At that point, you can start creating sketches that either project this or draw over this. You can edit those a little bit. And you get to a point where, let me just change this view here real quick. You get to a point where I'm gonna unsuppress this feature. You can start using this AutoCAD geometry to generate 3D geometry, right? So that's part of the experience. You don't have to throw away all of this really powerful information. You can reuse it. And because a lot of this is associative to the geometry, say for example, the length of this cylinder right here is 1 inch. If someone in AutoCAD changes that to 1.5 inches, because I've made the geometry associative in terms of 3D to the 2D, this cylinder in 3D will grow to 1.5 inches. So really powerful, really awesome. This is just some of the ways that you can reuse some of that legacy data that you do have when you do want to create a 3D representation of it. You don't have to start from scratch. And that's something that is, I guess, a fear of a lot of people. It looks like it's not sharing properly. Can you guys see it? Just want to double check that you guys can see this.
I can see it. It looks great.
Absolutely. Does someone want to real quick just type in the questions? Awesome. Brian Kelly, you are the best. Visible. Awesome. I had a couple people who said they couldn't, so just wanted to double check. Very cool. Let's run through this then. So now that we've showed you a little bit of some of the functionality to be able to go from 2D to 3D, you can both do it from the import function, or if you want to open a new sketch, I'll do that here as well. Let's just drop it here. Why not, right? You can also drop AutoCAD information into the sketch. So a lot of people don't know you can insert images. You can import points as well, right, with some of this table tabulated data and AutoCAD information as well. So this gives you a similar functionality. This isn't the full import functionality that is quote unquote any CAD functionality in Inventor, but this will bring the AutoCAD data into that sketch. So if that's something you need, you can do it through there as well. It's not associative, so keep that in mind as well. You're just inserting the file. And I see Matt here shaking his head. It's like, yes, that is what that means. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out later.
I'm like, what he said, man.
Absolutely. So that's one of those things, right? You can reuse a lot of this data. That's something a lot of people say is a big obstacle when moving from 2D to 3D. And so when moving to 2D to 3D, you have to select, I guess, from an organizational standpoint, where you want to start.
Right.
And why did you start, Matt, going to the Dimension 4 product first?
Well, it's really a great question. So our company started in 1971.
Mm-hmm.
So we were actually, before we even had 2D drawings, drafting, drawings as performed through a computer, that is. We were drafting them, right? We had draftsmen,
right,
sitting there on the draft table and going through the processes. So we've definitely seen quite a transition through life. But to answer your question, the Dimension 4 is the most showcased patriarch of our product line. We, as I mentioned, we have 65,000 different top level part numbers. You can really break that down to, really about 5 product lines that sell the most And then out of that 5, it's between our Dimension 4 and what is termed a 4-leg workbench Workmaster product line. The Dimension 4 is really what you're going to see in your pharmaceutical type build companies, medical, durable medical equipment type manufacturing, and so on. And the reason that is because it's just a very beautiful product. So I thought that one of the very best ways to start is to, one, use a product line that is one of our more popular, but also something that's really shiny. You know, because remember, I'm here with marketing too. So I need something that really is going to lure somebody in and say, hey, wow, look at the great job that they're doing. You know, much like these videos do for Katif. So the Dimension 4 highlights really the quality, the manufacturing, the engineering, the customer service, the entire experience with IAC Industry is really what the Dimension 4 represents. And so that's kind of why we started there first.
Okay.
Additionally into that, I had shown you earlier, I held up a brochure that shows all the specifications. The Dimension 4 is also one of our most widely used product lines in special and custom environments. And the extrusions, the uprights, actually have a hollowed out, it's about 1 3/4 inches of space that a lot of companies run airlines through, gas lines, you know, a myriad of things that go up and down those channels.
These guys right here.
Exactly, absolutely right. So what Nigel just pointed out, that blue trim, you take that out, you just simply slide it out the top, and now you have an entire area where people can then run electrical, gas lines, like I had said, anything that they need to operate whatever manufacturing they have, put that trim back in, and now it's hidden. So the 3D side of things really had a purpose in the beginning stages of our development from 2D to 3D with the Dimension 4, because really it's our most specialized product line. And like I said, our more flagship version.
Yep, and it's really configurable, right?
Yes.
Is I think a lot of it too is the sizing can change a little bit. The options I think is the really fun part. And I went through the configurator on their website and I put a bunch of options. I'm like, how expensive can I make it?
You can make it, well, as John, who I mentioned earlier, he says, hey, look, we can make the bench fly to the moon if you want to pay the money for it.
Absolutely. I was like, let's add
so I can see that with some jetpacks, you know, kind of flying through. But yeah, Nigel is correct. It does have a lot of variables. It also is linear. So meaning that one upright could be shared by 2 workstations.
Yes. And
we also have front and back systems as well that are also linear. So, or daisy chain, if that makes more sense to people. So that's why we started with that product.
Absolutely. Line. And it makes a lot of sense based on the options that I saw on this sheet, right, that Matt gloriously showed me on camera a couple minutes ago. It is so configurable. There's so many options. And you can only imagine how many iterations of a DWG file you would have.
Yes.
It's not pretty.
I think Al was cross-eyed a few times.
I think so. And so with the ability of Al to start using things like iParts and iAssemblies, you can get multiple iterations of a part into a single file. And I think that's a really big thing here. And so the example that I'll use today are these drawers, right? And on your website, what kind of options can you use?
So those drawers stack. So essentially the top part that Nigel has there, you can see that we have some hole patterns, and those hole patterns are each drawer has that same hole pattern. So you can either suspend them from each other, but all of them are going to have an origin of suspension, which is actually from the work surface itself. So those drawers have the opportunity to move along what we have termed a hat section, which is located underneath the work surface. So the drawers not only can suspend from each other, but they could also suspend from the work surface, and they can also suspend almost anywhere on the work surface, left, middle, right. So there's a lot of variations to that. But important to that too is the fact that we have 3-inch drawers, double 3-inch drawers, 6-inch drawers, double 6-inch drawers, 12-inch lockers.
Right.
We suspend laboratory cabinets, which some of you may have remembered from your biology courses and things of that nature, where you're working on these cabinets. We also suspend those from it, which is going to change your weight load requirements, which is a huge reason, again, that move towards a 3D. So you can have something as simple as a 3-inch drawer suspended, which, isn't incredibly sexy, but then you can get all the way to, like I was talking about, with suspended cabinetry that belongs in a laboratory environment. that is a little bit more cinematic.
Double lockers.
Double lockers, man. So that thing could get beefy. As Nigel said, you can dress it up, and it can certainly be.
It'll do what you need it to.
It will do what you need it to do.
Yeah, whatever you ask of it, right? So, so that's part of the reason that I jumped into this specifically, right? Is there's so many configurations of this, and I opened one while we were talking here, right? This is the double 3-inch drawers.
That is a double 3-inch
drawer. And we can go into, and we're in the same part file, right? Or the same assembly file, and we're just going through the configurations of this iAssembly, and this is the 6-inch drawer.
And it is. And what Nigel is doing right now is part of the reason why this showcase of the product, when we have reps and distributors out in the field, they're able to do the same thing.
Right.
And so now you're really able to show the anatomy of a product. I mean, and so if you're selling to somebody, that is a huge asset to have.
Yep.
Tremendous.
And all this information, right, is just comes from the specifications list, right? And so that's something, if you have something that is configurable at your organization and you already have that tabletized, right, in an Excel spreadsheet, or you have a brochure that has all of that information, it's really easy to bring that kind of stuff into Inventor, right? And start utilizing some of the parameters in Inventor. And so this is just the iAssembly author showing some of these components, right, to include, exclude, all of that stuff for when you build some of these configurable assemblies. This can get really complicated, especially if that assembly is very, very configurable. Here, there's only a couple of sizes, a couple of options, but you can only imagine the sheer amount of options that you could possibly get when you start compiling these drawers on top of the height of the table, on top of the size of the table, right? There's so many permutations.
Yes, perfect word for it. Absolutely.
And it could start getting really a headache to manage, but Inventor makes it really easy by managing them all in 1 or 2 different files. Right. So that's one way to look at it. Speaking of files, in AutoCAD, you have one DWG, right? And that contains all of your information. In Inventor, there's this assembly file. It's got part files in it. This top level assembly has got 379 parts in it.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah,
just a few.
Just a few, right? And 194 instances, right? And how do you manage all of that, right? This is hundreds of files more than your AutoCAD DWG. And because Inventor is inherently a parent-child relationship application, it understands that there are parent-child relationships. When you go ahead and send these files to people, sometimes that gets a little jumbled. And that's something you want to look at. And that's, I think, is part of the reason why your team started using the Fusion team to be able to share this information.
Absolutely. You
don't want to do a pack and go of this, for lack of a better word, and send that out to somebody, have them open it on their machine. Maybe they don't have Inventor, they can't even open it.
Right.
So what do? You make the process really simple and start utilizing some things in Fusion team or shared views, things along those lines, to be able to share this with other people and not have to send them that heavy file. Exactly. So let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick and what that process looks like for IAC, right? So let's take a look at sharing all of that new data, right, with the Dimension 4 workstation. And this is a screenshot from your guys' website, which is
looking good.
Yeah, it looks really, I like it a lot. So I'm going to open this right now, and we'll have that open on my Chrome tab, which is over here somewhere, I'm sure. Here we go. So this is the IAC website. Yes, sir. And I think you guys have taken it one step further than a lot of people, where you built a configurator that is here as well. Right. But I'm going to jump into the 3D model for this Dimension 4 workstation. So here it is without some of the bells and whistles. I personally like using this model right here. And we'll wait for it to load. So essentially what you guys did, if I understand this correctly, is you moved this all to Fusion Team.
Yep. And
from within Fusion Team, you had a web application expert import this through a third-party software into your website embedded directly. Correct. And we'll wait for this guy to load. It's one thing to have the 3D model, or an ortho of the 3D model, or an ISO of the 3D model. But when you have full rotational capability, it really helps the visualization.
It's beautiful. So essentially what we did is, as Nigel's rotating it, in Fusion, when you guys get into Fusion, when you have that opportunity, you're going to notice that there's a tremendous amount of tools. You can extract a lot of data from that. Some of it might be a little bit more proprietary than you want the user experience for the public viewing of that product to be, at least on the origin of the experience. So what we did is we basically took out those tools by minimizing the screen. So they actually are all there. It's just you can't get to them.
Yep, they're just over here on the left or right or bottom.
So they exist. So essentially we have the function that Nigel's using right now, but man, what a display of a product line. So let's just, this time last year, everybody, we did not have this tool. So what we did have is a large gallery of application photos. So we had a tremendous library of all these photos that we have to go to the user, you know, whoever the customer is, we got to go there, we got to take the photos, or we have to actually design the product, manufacture the product, go to a studio, get it on a turntable, and video record all of that. I can tell you right now that that last experience I'm talking about in terms of the studio time is about $25,000 to get it all done. So now what we did just through Fusion, I don't want to give away the cost, but it's a heck of a lot less, I'll tell you that much.
Absolutely.
And with Nigel, now has that experience that I would in the past have to go through a heck of a lot more. And now Al is able to put this together relatively quickly. We're able to leverage the assets that Fusion gives, and we're now able to give somebody user experience that Nigel is showcasing right now for anybody. For anybody that gets to go to our website.
Absolutely. And I think this is really powerful, right? It's like you said, you have to take physical photos of the completed product.
Product. And you remember you talked about permutations? So what if I want to show it with a 3-inch drawer instead of a 6-inch drawer? Or a locker instead of, you know,
double photos, triple photos,
double photos. Yep. So now I'm there for a week. I might as well put a tent at the studio and stay there trying to get all those permutations.
Absolutely.
Al can do it. You know, I don't want to take away from Al, but he's quick, man. And if we need a different version, he makes that version. We load it to Fusion. So not only do I have it within Fusion, but now I have it for, so each time he builds a model and it goes to Fusion, that same model is now also shared with all of our sales force. So as soon as they finish something, we load it. They now have something else to talk about with their customers.
Absolutely. And I think that's the real power of all of this. It's a lot. How much time do you think you saved from, like, say, for example, Al had to make an AutoCAD drawing of a new configuration?
I wish Al was here to answer that question, but you know, I kind of joked earlier about, you know, the production versus marketing. And marketing needs something now because we need it now. We need to try to sell something. We need to get it out there. We have an opportunity, right? Well, it's easy for us to say that because, you know, we put it on a website, we send out an email blast. I don't want to take away from our efforts, but it's a lot more simplistic for marketing to get something out there than it is for engineering to design something. So I don't want to take away from Al's experience by saying it's too short, but it's a heck of a lot shorter today in, you know, taking the 2Ds to these versions. And once they're drawn in 3D, now it's quick. But before, when you'd have to do all this, it'd be some days. You know, I'm guesstimating probably a few days for him to make those changes that I had talked about in terms of a configuration, because you have to redraw it.
And that's difference in quoting time, and I think that's really big, right?
Absolutely.
With this, you can get more quotes out.
Time is money.
If your hit rate is the same, let's just say the hit rate is the same at minimum. Right, you're getting triple the amount of quotes out.
Absolutely. And that's a huge point, because now what we're able to do is from a sales perspective, and I know this isn't a sales type conversation that we're having today, but if your user experience is all of a sudden exponentially better, so you're on this website and you're viewing these products, we now have somebody who's interested in our product that's actually really interested.
Right.
So what that means is you've now bought into the process. There's a little bit of some personal equity in it. You're going to have a little bit more questions because you can see more, you can detail more, you can ask questions of the salespeople that are a little bit more educated on your end that you didn't know about our product if we only had the 2D type versions, because now you could really see all the nuts and bolts. So the process has improved, not only the efficiencies from the IAC perspective, but actually the user experience is improved by it, because now they have more confidence in the questions they're going to ask. Therefore, they're a little bit more comfortable.
Absolutely. And you know what? We've got a little bit more time here. Might as well show a couple more best practices before we jump into questions as well. So I'm gonna jump back into Inventor here. Love the website, by the way.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Preparing for this, I've looked at every product line. It's like, what does this look like? I want one of these in my house.
Wait, well, Nigel's gonna get one.
It'll be like Oprah. Look under your chairs, everybody.
Yeah, right.
A table under your chair. So we'll jump into Inventor as well, and some of the other benefits of going to a 3D application as well. And you can do some of this in AutoCAD, but in Inventor, you know, you got a lot more power.
Right.
So let's take a look at standard content. So there is a number of bolts and washers in this assembly. And we've got a full representation of those. Sometimes this might be something you didn't draw in AutoCAD, for example, or in 2D because it was too difficult. You didn't need the detail. You just put a annotation that said, hey, bolt here.
Yeah, believe me, there's one there.
Absolutely, right? It's like,
I promise there's a bolt there.
It has to get put together somehow. Well, let's take a look at, like, say, for example, this particular fastener is, let's say, not available anymore.
Okay.
If in AutoCAD, the solution to that is you have to redraw them all. And guess what? It sucks.
Yeah.
And because it's not associative, you have to go into all of the drawings and redraw them all. But in Inventor, you know, you have the full content center library, very similar to what you have in AutoCAD Mechanical. But let's take a look at some of that information, right? Within the content center library, you've got some of this information for bolted connections. You can even use that as well. But let's go ahead and jump in, assemble. We can go ahead and place. We can place from content center. It's as simple as doing this, going into the content center itself, selecting one. Let's not use hex bolts anymore, right? Maybe your organization is like, let's start using some of these slotted hex head bolts so that, you know, they could be installed using a screwdriver, right? Because not all our customers or the people on the shop floor, they just, for some reason, they ran out of sockets.
Yeah.
Right? They just disappeared. You can go ahead and start inserting some of this information relatively simply, and then selecting, right, what the thread descriptions are, what those nominal lengths are here. And all this information sits in that content center database for you to bring into Inventor. And this is really powerful because you don't have to draw a representation of it. It already has one, because who really wants to draw fasteners? And who wants to download fasteners too, right? From like McMaster-Carr, for example. You don't want to download one for every assembly. If you do have to for some reason, I would just load it into the library after you download it the first time and just reuse it over and over again. So that's one way to look at it. You can also replace these with information from there as well, right? So, you know, you can do a repeat place, but you can also just change some of these components as well via some of the options. Let's talk about one more thing before we move on. That's bill of materials.
Yeah.
Bill of materials is huge. What does that mean to your organization, right? It's like what everything's built out of, but
yeah.
what?
Well, you know, Nigel and I were talking about that a little bit earlier, and you know, we're currently using a desk to hold our computers for this presentation. And, you know, we oftentimes, and really in any product line, I mean, even if you just walk through your own house, we kind of take for granted the products that we have, in the sense of you know, a lot of times you don't conceptualize how hard it is for that product to actually be made, and all the work and effort that goes into it. And I give any engineering, all engineers and all manufacturing globally, all the credit to get us to the point where we're able to buy a product. But talking about the engineering side of it specifically, it's incredible the amount of pieces and nuts and bolts and angles and cuts and shears and bends that go into manufacturing what you see in front of you today with that Dimension 4. And not to mention that, but our product is actually used for others to build their product. So you really have to put in such a strong quality charter. And as Nigel was showing you the hex bolt that we use, and why did we determine to use that hex bolt versus not using the one that you could use a screwdriver for? Well, the engineers have purpose and reason behind all of that. And to note how well of a choice that was to use as an example of how easy you can change something, we are always looking at our products from a research and design standpoint and saying, how can we make things better? So if you do want to continue to make your product better, you also have to be efficient on the back end and make it quick if you want to make a change. So that bill of materials is essential, and it does come down to the types of washers you use and the types of bolts you use. And so if you're going to recreate the wheel, anytime you just want to change a washer, man, you're going to be doing that all day long. So that is the reason why this course that we've taken to go to 3D, using the Inventor, using Fusion, using AutoCAD, everything that we have is really gotten us to a point now to where that bill of materials isn't as scary when you're moving towards this transition.
And then the bill of materials comes directly from the CAD data itself. In AutoCAD, sometimes, depending on which version of AutoCAD you're using, right, a lot of it is manual. You make a change upstream somewhere, it might not make its way all the way downstream to your top level assembly, right? But here in Inventor or other parametric modelers, the bill of materials comes directly from what the assembly is made out of, right? So there are 48 of these washers, right? And you can tell exactly which ones they are. And you can also tell it's a purchase component. And that's really key too, is like, okay, well, let me separate this by the purchase components. Let me give this to the people on my team that are responsible for getting all of that to the manufacturing floor on time.
Right.
They have their full list. These are things that they need to check off on and make sure that they get to my manufacturing floor, because a delay in purchase parts is a delay in shipment.
Is a delay in everything. And
Absolutely.
It's all lead times these days. It's all lead times, Nigel. I mean, it's, you know, if you didn't get that computer that you're working off for this presentation fast enough, you know, it's a Best Buy run.
Absolutely.
And it might not get you what you need. So everything that we do has a lead time crunch to it, no matter what you manufacture, what you buy. You know, not everything is Amazon, right? And gets to you the next day.
Yeah.
But it's essential. And so, yes, there's an entire supply chain that's part of this. So, you know, from my perspective, the idea to use this for marketing really is diminished by the value that our production got from this, and the entire flow of the front end before we've even manufactured something. And it's not really something that we would have known was going to be such a pleasant experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something that oftentimes gets overlooked when making that change from 2D to 3D. It's like, awesome, I'm going to sell more stuff because I have all of this quoting that's happening faster. I can design faster. Well, then you realize, wait, I have more accurate idea of what my lead times need to be, what I need to order, all that stuff, right? You can, if you really wanted to go super deep, you could connect this to ERP, make things happen automatically, have the auto-generate part numbers, all this fun stuff.
That's for next time.
Yeah, that's when we're thinking about flying to the moon.
You remember
right?
the KISS baby steps here, right?
Absolutely, keep it simple, right? And so that's just one more thing I wanted to show as the transition from 2D to 3D. But I think the most powerful thing here is being able to leverage some of that legacy data.
Yes, sir.
We understand that you guys as organizations have a ton of this information. Start leveraging some of these tools in Inventor that have come out over the last couple of years, and just reuse some of the drawings you have.
Yeah.
You can reuse PDFs in a very similar fashion as well, if you've got PDFs and not DWGs. So if you want to learn more about that, let us know. But right now, let's go ahead and jump straight into questions. There's definitely a couple of questions I want to go ahead and address. If you do have any, go ahead and type those into your respective chat panels at all time. And so let's move through there. All right. So Radu asks, how do your 3D models behave when the AutoCAD drawings change and update? So in a case right here where I imported this AutoCAD drawing, it is using the AnyCAD functionality in Inventor to be able to bring this in. So much like if you were to edit a step file, for example, and it updated, and your Inventor file would update the same, it does the same thing. So like I mentioned, if say, for example, the cylinder is now 1 inch and the AutoCAD drawing gets updated to 3 inches, if you are using it as an associative piece of geometry to the AutoCAD underlay, this will also update. So keep that in mind when doing that. If you want to turn that associativity on, you want to turn that off, things along those lines, make sure to make those decisions ahead of time so that you either get the desired result or of it changing or not changing. So one way to look at that. Let me go ahead and type that. Cool. So biggest question about 2D to 3D, this is from Claudio, is their legacy models are in old AutoCAD or MDT for our friends who use Mechanical Desktop in the past, and ME10. Quote unquote, none of them are quote unquote clean drawings that would easily translate. There are workflows to be able to bring a lot of those drawings in. So like here, I brought those AutoCAD drawings in. You could do the same with some PDFs. Even if you have raster images, you could bring some of those in as well. There are workflows for all of that to bring those in. If that's something you want to look into to bring over some of that legacy data, let us know and we can kind of guide you through some of the ways to go ahead and do that. What's the easiest way to get a D4 workstation?
Well, the easiest way would go to www.iacindustries.com and you would submit a quotation for the Dimension 4. So if, as Nigel wants to choose, so let's laminate, go ahead and choose just a standard laminate. We work heavily in the ESD because of electronic manufacturing. And so the depth, there we go. You just add that to a quote.
Yep.
And then on the right-hand side there, you'll see send quote request. Now that's one way of going about it. The other way of going about it is you go to store.IACindustries.com. So if Nigel goes to shopping tools, and
Yep. Oh, yeah, that works too.
And then go to current offers. There we go.
Boom.
Click on that sucker there. And that's going to allow you to go to the store where many of our products are purchasable through the web e-commerce platform. So those are the easiest way to buy Dimension 4 products, and all of our products for that matter. You can get lost in our website from a good perspective, in the sense that there are a lot of variations. I mean, it's like going to a car dealership and
Yep.
Or AM PM with a hungry stomach, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to come out with a few more Snickers bars than you thought.
Yeah, my cart was pretty full.
Yeah, your cart was full. And the other way of going about it too is using the configurator, because it's the easiest to make sure that you don't accidentally order a size that's different than the size of the bench that you have.
Yep, absolutely. So let's go ahead and finish off some of these questions. For an organization that uses Inventor Pro, where would Fusion 360 or Fusion Team come into play? Is there some kind of Venn diagram, I guess, a visualization for what serves which purpose? So Inventor Professional and Fusion 360 specifically. So those two applications are CAD applications. When we're talking about Fusion Team, that's that sharing application that we're creating some of these 3D rotational views from. So if you're building CAD models, you're going to want to stick to Inventor and Fusion 360. I know the naming conventions are kind of confusing sometimes. Hopefully this clears it up a little bit for you. When you want to be able to share that information or store that information in the cloud to be able to leverage some of the functionality that IAC has here, you want to use Fusion Team to do that. And you can look at Fusion Team as kind of a CAD agnostic cloud repository for your files. So people use OneDrive, people use Dropbox. Those are cloud repositories for Word documents, PowerPoints, etc. Well, Fusion Team is the same for CAD. And it gives you some of the bells and whistles of being able to visualize a lot of it.
It's great. It's great.
So that is, hopefully that helps. If you want to go into a deeper conversation about what's right for your organization, especially when picking between Inventor and Fusion 360, let me know. I can have that conversation with you and we can figure out what's best for you. Both have, I guess, very similar functionality, and some have very specialized functionality between two tools. So I would look there. I think that's everything I have for questions now. Let me make a couple of announcements, and if anyone has any more, go ahead and type those in. But let me jump back into my PowerPoint. I need to find it again. It's here. There we go. So next week, we have a Granta webinar, right? Much like this week where it was a little bit special, we had a outside guest with us this week. We're going to do one next week as well. And that's for the ANSYS product Granta, which is a material selector application. So how many different polymers are there in the world? A ton, right? And making the decision of which one to use, sometimes I can't wrap my head around it. So that's what Granta is really for. And I'm going to go ahead and open this in another Chrome tab. Let me move this over and open this up. So we're doing a Granta webinar with our ANSYS team. And if you didn't already know, Kativ is an Autodesk partner as well as an ANSYS partner. And ANSYS and Autodesk are partners with each other. So I guess we help bridge that gap a little bit. And so material selector application Granta, we're going to go over some of those materials selection decisions within Granta, and being able to kind of figure out what material you want to select based on price, based on its thermal conductivity, based on density, all of that information within this application help you select what you want to use and make your products out of. Polymers, there's infinite. When you look at steels, there's infinite. It's like, what do these numbers mean?
We'll be watching that next week.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm looking at this going, man, the timing couldn't be better, Nigel.
Absolutely,
right? Good deal bringing them in.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely.
And so we're going to go over this with some of our friends over on our ANSYS side of the team. I'll still be here as well, and our friend Eric Meyer will be here joining us as well for this webinar. So definitely stay tuned for this. It is really powerful. I love the tool, actually. I've spent a lot of time digging around, trying to figure out how I could best leverage it myself. So that's one thing. And last but not least, for the Fusion team ITAR stuff, let me get back to you on that. I don't have that information on the top of my head right now, but I can grab that for you. So cool. I think, let me go ahead and take a look. Is there a high-level presentation that shows workflow you've used to achieve this, including the software used? Brian, are you talking about the online rotator majigger? Okay, let me get back to you on that, Brian. I can get you that information. Cool. Absolutely. Brian's one of the guys. He's on every week.
I just enjoy watching the flow. You guys are doing a great job. Great
Absolutely.
audience out there too.
Absolutely, and that's part of it. That's part of it, right? Is the community that we've
Yes.
built. And I think that's a lot of the reason why we've done this. We've built this community. We've joined a lot of people together for the sake of being able to pass information that we have and you have, right,
Yes,
as a customer of ours to the rest of the community. Definitely, definitely. And Brian Kelly's, he used to work for Cative, Oregon. He used to work at Autodesk.
Oh, right.
So it's really awesome seeing Brian join us every week for this. So definitely thank you everyone for joining us this week and each and every week. If you do have any suggestions for future webinars, go ahead and shoot me an email. I'll go ahead and address those. But last but not least, I'd like to thank you, Matt, for joining us today. I know it was a really crazy commute all the way across the hallway.
I'm tired, man. I broke a sweat, walking up the stairs.
Absolutely.
It's been wonderful.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate it. So again, thanks everybody. We'll see you this time next week, 10 a.m. on Thursday. We'll see you then. Take it easy, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.